Mary Laurent had grown up believing that power solved everything. From childhood, she had watched billion-dollar contracts being signed at dinner tables and rivals being destroyed with a single phone call. Wealth surrounded her like armor, and arrogance had become her second skin. She was known for her sharp temper, her unforgiving tongue, and her refusal to bend to anyone's will. In her world, people either obeyed or disappeared from relevance, and Mary had never questioned that. Her parents, however, believed power needed reinforcement. The Laurent empire was vast, but it was not unchallenged, and competition had grown dangerous. Their solution was calculated and cold: a marriage alliance with their strongest business rivals. Love was irrelevant, and consent was optional. Mary was informed, not asked, that she would marry Marcus Hale, a man whose family controlled half the market she herself dominated. To them, it was security. To Mary, it was imprisonment. Mary agreed to meet Marcus only once, and only to prove that no one could force her hand. The restaurant they chose was elite and private, a place where reputation mattered as much as money. As she entered, her presence commanded attention without effort. She walked directly to a table near the window, ignoring the discreet sign that read reserved. That table, she knew, had always been booked under Marcus's name. Sitting there was her first act of rebellion. When Marcus Hale arrived, the air around him shifted. He was tall, composed, and impeccably dressed in a black suit that reflected discipline rather than vanity. His eyes were sharp but unreadable, trained to conceal intention. As he sat across from her, Mary felt an unfamiliar pause inside herself, a brief moment where her confidence wavered. She dismissed it immediately, straightening her posture and meeting his gaze without blinking. Their conversation was formal and restrained, stripped of warmth or curiosity. Marcus did not compliment her, nor did he attempt to charm her. His voice was calm, controlled, and distant, as if she were merely another negotiation. Mary found herself irritated by his indifference, far more than she would have been by arrogance. She was used to men trying to impress her, not treating her as replaceable. The tension shattered when another woman entered the restaurant. She was elegant, stylish, and undeniably confident. The moment she saw Marcus, her face lit up, and she walked straight toward him, wrapping her arms around him without hesitation. She spoke to him intimately, laughed softly, and behaved as though Mary did not exist. When she finally asked who Mary was, Marcus answered without emotion, calling the meeting nothing more than a business lunch. Humiliation burned through Mary's veins. The words echoed in her mind, sharper than any insult she had ever received. When the waiter arrived to take their order, Marcus casually asked Mary what she preferred. She ordered Italian pasta with forced calm and excused herself, retreating to the restroom to regain control over the rage threatening to explode. She refused to let him see her crack. When Mary returned, the scene was worse than her imagination. The woman now sat in her chair, and Marcus was kissing her openly, unapologetically. He did not look embarrassed when he noticed Mary watching. Instead, he stood up, took the woman's hand, and told Mary they would meet again in 2 days. With his arm wrapped around the woman's waist, he walked out, leaving Mary alone in a room full of whispers. Mary sat frozen, fury and humiliation twisting together in her chest. She had never felt so publicly diminished, so deliberately dismissed. As she struggled to contain her emotions, the waiter approached again and politely asked if she needed anything else. Mary looked up at him slowly and asked his name. When he replied, "David," something clicked inside her mind. An idea formed, reckless, calculated, and dangerous. For the first time that night, Why Laurent smiled. Mary Laurent remained seated long after Marcus Hale disappeared from the restaurant, her posture stiff and her expression unreadable. The humiliation she had suffered did not break her, but it ignited something far more dangerous inside her. She replayed every moment in her mind, the indifferent tone, the careless kiss, the deliberate dismissal, and each memory hardened her resolve. This was no longer about marriage or business. It was about reclaiming control. Mary did not forgive insults, and she never forgot them. The untouched plate of pasta was cleared away, but Mary's attention remained fixed on the quiet figure moving efficiently between tables. David worked with steady focus, unaware that his life was about to be pulled into a storm he had never imagined. When Mary finally called him over, her voice was calm, almost casual, hiding the calculation behind her eyes. She asked him a few simple questions about his job, his schedule, and how long he had worked there. David answered politely, though. He sensed that this conversation carried weight far beyond small talk. After his shift ended, Mary requested a private conversation, choosing a quiet corner of the restaurant where no one would interrupt them. She spoke directly, without drama or exaggeration, explaining that her family was forcing her into a marriage she did not want. David listened carefully, his expression serious and attentive, sensing the truth beneath her sharp tone. When she finally told him she needed someone to pretend to be her partner, he did not react immediately. The silence that followed made Mary uneasy in a way she did not expect. David eventually asked the one question Mary had anticipated but hoped to avoid: why him? She explained that she needed someone real, someone unconnected to her world of wealth and manipulation, someone her parents could not easily control or intimidate. David pointed out that pretending to love someone like her would not be simple, and that he was not interested in being treated as a disposable prop. His refusal to flatter or fear her unsettled Mary, but it also intrigued her. Mary offered him a generous payment, enough to erase his financial worries and change his future. David did not immediately accept, making it clear that money alone would not justify humiliation or dishonesty. He set clear boundaries, demanding respect and honesty in return for his participation. Mary agreed, though part of her bristled at the idea of answering to anyone. The deal was made, not with warmth, but with mutual understanding. What neither of them acknowledged was the quiet shift that occurred in that moment. Mary had invited someone into her carefully controlled life who would not bend to her temper or wealth. David, in turn, had agreed to stand beside a woman known for destroying people who disappointed her. It was an arrangement built on necessity, not trust, and that made it dangerously unstable. Elsewhere, in the city, Marcus Hale reviewed reports from his assistant with growing irritation. News of Mary Lawrence's sudden involvement with another man caught his attention more than it should have. The alliance his family desired was slipping from his grasp, and the unfamiliar sensation of being outmaneuvered unsettled him. He told himself his interest was purely strategic, yet the image of Mary, defying expectations, lingered in his thoughts longer than he cared to admit. Unaware of the consequences waiting ahead, Mary and David prepared to step into a carefully crafted illusion. What began as a calculated lie was already threatening to become something far more complicated. Neither of them yet realized that this decision would change everything. The transformation of David's life began quietly, without drama or celebration. Mary arranged everything with ruthless efficiency: new clothes, a proper introduction to her social circle, and carefully constructed stories that would withstand scrutiny. David resisted extravagance, choosing simplicity over excess, which only made Mary's parents more uneasy. They could not read him, and that uncertainty disturbed them far more than open defiance ever could. Mary watched this unfold with secret satisfaction, knowing she had successfully disrupted their carefully planned future. Public appearances followed quickly. Charity events, private dinners, and business gatherings became stages where Mary and David performed their roles with calculated precision. Mary played the devoted partner flawlessly, her hand resting naturally on David's arm, her smile warm enough to convince even the most suspicious observers. David, however, surprised her by how effortlessly he fit into the role, offering calm support without seeking attention. His quiet confidence made people listen when he spoke, and Mary found herself relying on his steady presence more than she had anticipated. Behind closed doors, reality was far less polished. Mary's temper surfaced often, especially when plans did not go her way or David questioned her decisions. She spoke sharply, sometimes cruelly, using words as weapons she had mastered over a lifetime. David absorbed her anger without retreating, responding with controlled honesty rather than submission. Each time he refused to be intimidated, Mary felt both challenged and unsettled, as though someone had quietly shifted the ground beneath her feet. One evening, after a particularly tense argument, David confronted her directly. He told her that pretending to love someone did not give her the right to degrade them, even in private. The words struck deeper than she expected, echoing in the silence that followed. No one had ever demanded accountability from her before, and the realization left her momentarily speechless. For the first time, Mary felt the uncomfortable weight of self-awareness pressing against her pride. Meanwhile, Marcus Hale watched from a distance, his frustration growing with each new report. Mary's public appearances with David had shifted the narrative entirely, weakening the alliance his family desired. Marcus could not understand why the image of her smiling beside another man unsettled him so deeply. He reminded himself that this was business, nothing more. Yet the thought of her choosing someone else felt like a personal defeat. Control had always come easily to him, and losing it irritated him beyond reason. As days passed, something unexpected began to form between Mary and David. Small moments, shared laughter, quiet conversations, unguarded honesty slipped through the cracks of their arrangement. Mary found herself speaking freely in his presence, revealing fragments of vulnerability she had buried long ago. David noticed the change, but he remained cautious, aware that affection built on deception could collapse without warning. Neither of them dared to name what was happening, afraid that acknowledging it would shatter the fragile balance they maintained. Unknowingly, the illusion they had created was starting to blur into reality. What began as a strategic lie was slowly reshaping their emotions, binding them in ways neither had planned. And somewhere in the shadows, Marcus Hale prepared to step back into Mary's life, determined to reclaim what he believed should have been his. As weeks passed, the illusion surrounding Mary and David became stronger, yet so did the cracks beneath it. Mary's parents, initially suspicious, began to accept the relationship when they realized how firmly Mary stood her ground. She rejected every subtle attempt they made to reopen the discussion of Marcus Hale, responding with cold certainty. That left no room for negotiation. David's presence beside her had given her something she had never possessed before, a shield that was not built from money or authority, but from choice. Despite the public success of their arrangement, private tension intensified. Mary struggled with emotions she did not know how to name, let alone control. She found herself irritated by David's silence, then comforted by it moments later. Her temper flared whenever she felt vulnerable, and David often became the target of that confusion. Each argument revealed more than anger. It exposed fear of losing control, fear of needing someone, fear of being seen beyond her power. David, in contrast, remained grounded, though not unaffected. He was increasingly aware that his feelings were shifting from obligation to attachment. Mary was difficult, sharp, and unpredictable. Yet beneath her arrogance he saw someone deeply wounded by a lifetime of conditional affection. He cared for her in quiet ways, offering stability without demanding gratitude. Still, he reminded himself that their relationship was built on a lie, and lies always carried a cost. The balance shattered when Marcus Hale reappeared. He requested a private meeting with Mary under the guise of finalizing unresolved business matters. Against David's advice, Mary agreed, confident she could handle Marcus without consequence. The meeting took place in a sleek corporate office, where power radiated from polished glass and steel. Marcus greeted her with the same controlled composure, but his eyes betrayed curiosity and something dangerously close to challenge. Marcus questioned her relationship with David, disguising his interest as professional concern. He implied that her involvement with a waiter-turned-partner was reckless, even embarrassing, and warned her of the long-term consequences. Mary responded with cold defiance, making it clear that she would not be manipulated again. The exchange was sharp, charged, and deeply personal, reigniting a tension neither of them wanted to acknowledge. When Mary returned home that night, David sensed the shift immediately. She was distant, defensive, and unusually quiet. After pressing her gently, he learned about the meeting and Marcus's thinly veiled threats. David did not raise his voice, but his disappointment was evident. He reminded Mary that control did not mean isolation and that pushing people away would only reinforce the cage she claimed to hate. The argument that followed was intense and raw. Mary accused David of overstepping, while David accused her of hiding behind anger instead of confronting her fear. Words were exchanged that could not be taken back, each cutting deeper than intended. When silence finally fell, it was heavy. With unspoken regret, Mary realized too late that she had hurt the one person who stood beside her without agenda. That night, alone with her thoughts, Mary faced a terrifying truth. The arrangement she had designed to protect herself had become something real, and real things could be lost. For the first time, the idea of David leaving frightened her more than any forced marriage ever had. The days following the argument passed in strained silence, each moment heavy with words left unsaid. Mary immersed herself in work, filling her schedule with meetings and decisions that demanded precision but offered no comfort. For the first time, success felt hollow, unable to distract her from the emptiness that had settled in her chest. David, meanwhile, kept his distance, honoring the boundaries she had angrily reinforced, though it cost him more than he admitted. The absence between them spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. Pressure from Mary's parents returned with renewed force. They questioned her judgment, criticized her attachment to David, and reminded her of the stability Marcus Hale represented. Each conversation felt like a calculated assault on her autonomy, reopening wounds she thought had healed. Mary defended her choices fiercely, but doubt crept in during moments of solitude. She wondered whether love could truly survive in a world governed by power, or whether she was fighting an inevitable outcome. The breaking point came during a formal corporate event attended by all major stakeholders, including Marcus Hale. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken rivalry and polished hostility. Mary arrived with David, her composure flawless, but tension followed them like a shadow. Marcus observed them closely, noting every gesture, every unguarded glance, and his patience wore thin as the evening progressed. In a calculated move, Marcus confronted Mary privately, revealing that he knew the truth about David's origins and their arrangement. He accused her of deception and threatened to expose their relationship as a farce, framing it as a betrayal of both families' interests. The threat struck at Mary's deepest fear, not of scandal, but of losing David. For the first time, Marcus held real leverage, and he knew it. Mary faced a choice she had spent her life avoiding: protect her empire or protect her heart. She could silence Marcus with power, or she could tell the truth and risk everything. When she returned to David, her defenses finally collapsed. She admitted that their relationship had begun as a lie and confessed her fear of losing control, of being unworthy of genuine affection. The honesty left her exposed, stripped of the armor she had relied on for so long. David listened without interruption, the weight of her confession settling heavily between them. The betrayal hurt, but it was tempered by understanding. He had known from the beginning that deception shaped her world, yet hearing it spoken aloud forced him to confront his own vulnerability. After a long silence, he told her that love built on lies could not survive unless the truth was faced completely. His words were not a threat, but a plea. Together, they made a decision that would change everything. Mary would confront her parents, expose Marcus's manipulation, and claim her right to choose her own future. It was a reckless move, one that risked both reputation and fortune, but it was the first choice Mary had made without calculation. In that moment, power meant nothing compared to honesty. As they stood side by side, uncertain but united, Mary realized that the cost of truth was high, but the cost of living without it was far greater. The confrontation Mary had avoided her entire life finally arrived, not with shouting or drama, but with quiet certainty. She sat across from her parents in the same grand room where decisions had always been made for her. Yet this time the balance had shifted. With David beside her, Mary spoke calmly, explaining the truth of her relationship and exposing Marcus Hale's manipulation without hesitation. She made it clear that she would no longer serve as a bargaining tool for business security. Her words were steady, not fueled by anger, but by clarity she had never possessed before. Her parents reacted with disbelief, then outrage, and finally resignation. They threatened consequences, loss of support, damage to reputation, fractures within the empire, but Mary did not retreat. For the first time, she accepted that freedom demanded sacrifice. She was prepared to walk away from privilege if it meant owning her life. David's presence grounded her, reminding her that strength did not always come from dominance, but from standing firm in truth. Marcus's final attempt to regain control came swiftly. He tried to discredit David publicly, framing him as an opportunist who had exploited Mary's rebellion. However, the narrative collapsed when Mary openly acknowledged her initial deception and took responsibility for it. Her honesty dismantled Marcus's leverage, leaving him exposed as a manipulator rather than a savior. The alliance dissolved, not with scandal, but with quiet finality. In the aftermath, Mary's world changed in ways she had never anticipated. She stepped back from certain aspects of the family empire, choosing independence over inherited power. The decision shocked her peers, but it brought her an unexpected sense of peace. For the first time, her identity was not defined by contracts or control, but by choice. Her relationship with David evolved slowly and carefully, free from the illusion that had once bound them. They learned each other without pretense, navigating differences with patience rather than conflict. Mary's temper did not disappear overnight, nor did David expect it to, but mutual respect replaced fear and dominance. Love, she discovered, was not submission, it was partnership. Standing together on a quiet evening, far removed from boardrooms and expectations, Mary realized how profoundly her life had changed. She had begun this journey determined to escape a forced marriage and had ended it by reclaiming herself. Power had once defined her, but now it no longer controlled her. She had chosen freedom, and in doing so, she had chosen love.